Does anybody else have good news? Bobby, any good news?
I've got a condo listed for lease. I'm gonna have another one today, so that's cool.
Yeah, where are you getting your clients?
Sphere, right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sphere is good. Come on in. Come on down.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Since you're brand new, you get to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
My name is Tina Pambukchan, and I just started with Keller Williams just 10 days ago.
Awesome.
I haven't even had I'm getting my ID today. Yay!
Yay! Yay!
I haven't really done much of anything except attend clients and meet with everybody.
And you're a good friend of my good friend Tony. That's
Very good
important.
friend.
Tony's a good guy.
Yes.
How we do things here is I constantly run through just a big loop. Buyer's agency and agency, listing packets, and then purchase agreements. And we just keep going through those, and every Friday from 8:30 to 9:30. And to get through everything, it's probably 2 months, I would say, of Fridays, an hour at a time. We did agency last week, and this is really the second part of agency, doing the buyer's agency contract. So you'll be catching up with agency the next time through. But
Okay.
with the buyer's agency contract, we talked about designated agency a little bit last week. Who can tell me about designated agency? How you'd explain it to your client? Come on, guys. I don't want to have to call on Lon, because I mean, Lon's going to know it. But you guys all should know this. How can you, again, how can you talk to your clients if you can't explain it to me? And therein lies the biggest problem. If you can't explain stuff to your clients and make them feel comfortable with it, you're fighting an uphill battle. Designated agency is pretty simple from a client point of view.
I'm not available, only reciprocation afterwards.
It's pretty simple. That's not a bad way of looking at it. Now, what happens, why was designated agency put in place?
So we wouldn't have dual agency in the office.
To eliminate as much dual agency
Yeah.
as possible. Correct. Because dual agency isn't necessarily the best scenario. Okay. So how do you get into dual agency in our office?
Isn't what an agent was not supposed to buy it and sell it?
Correct. If they're representing both the buyer and seller on their own listing. If it's a listing with one agent in the office and you have a buyer, it's not dual agency. Okay. So, designated buyer's agency contract. And again, who's the broker in the office?
Says you.
I kind of tricked myself on that one. I worded it a little wrong. Who's the broker of the office?
Wendy?
Oh,
You mean the highest
You.
person?
The entity.
the entity.
The entity is the broker, remember. Keller Williams is the broker. Myself
Oh.
is the associate broker, supervisory broker, whatever. But when you see people's cards that say broker, they're not right. Okay? If they work for a company, they're not the broker. So. All right, exclusive designated buyer's agency contract. This agreement made and entered into by and between, you put the client's name there. As principal purchase leasee, herein referred to as client. And Keller Williams Northville Market Center as the client's designated agent. You can use these as your cheat sheets. Fill them out properly and they'll make your life much easier. Keller Williams Realty Northville Market Center and client hereby designate what goes in there.
Your name?
No, not my name.
Not Colin.
I just had to use that one, your names. As client's designated agent. Client shall have an agency relationship with only the Keller Williams Realty Northville Market Center designated agent named above in my name as supervisory broker. If a potential seller is represented by a designated agent with Keller Williams Realty Northville Market Center other than the designated agent named above, Keller Williams Realty Northville Market Center and all supervisory brokers shall be automatically be deemed disclosed consensual dual agents. Dual agency shall not include the situation where the seller of the property which the client is interested is represented by a designated agent within Keller Williams Northville Market Center that does not have an agency relationship with the client. The first paragraph, or the second, looking at this way, designated agency, says who's in the dual agency scenario, correct? So who's in a dual agency situation if two agents in our office are dealing with the same property?
You.
The brokers. The second, or the next paragraph says who's not in a dual agency situation, right? You guys agree with me on that? I'm giving you an easy answer in there. Yes, you can agree with me on that. So remember, when you're explaining designated agency to a client, is all you have to tell them is your relationship with me is with me right now. And if by chance you can't get in touch with me, you need to talk to my broker, Pete. End of story. And anybody else in the office does not have an agency relationship with you, and if you called and asked, or asked them a question, they're not watching out for your best interest at that point. Okay? If we have more time, I'll explain. I'm gonna mess with you guys a little bit later on. How's that? The purpose of this contract. Client has employed the services of a broker to assist client purchasing real estate, as more particularly described in paragraph 2. Broker services shall include, but not be limited to, consulting with the client regarding the desirability of a particular property and the availability of financing, formulating acquisitions, strategies, and negotiating purchases, lease agreements. Client acknowledges that the broker is not acting as an attorney, tax advisor, surveyor, appraiser, environmental expert, or structural or mechanical engineer, and the client should contact professionals on these matters. The first part talks about what you are supposed to do, and the second one just says, you know what, I'm not this. I don't pretend to be this. I don't play this on TV. I am an agent. But you need to, if they need help with other things, you kind of should point them in the right direction. All right? Before you look at 2, you guys need to wake up. We talked about this. Can a client have an agency relationship with more than one agent? Bob, how so?
For an example, you could be looking for a house in 2 separate areas, and my expertise wouldn't be in this area that they're looking, say like maybe up north somewhere, or down here in our area. I could be looking for a home for them here.
Correct. Even though this does say exclusive designated buyer's agency, when we think exclusive, we think that's the only one. But that's not necessarily the case. Is it in, again, we talked about this. Where are you licensed to sell real estate?
Michigan?
State of Michigan. Is it in the client's best interest that you show them homes out in Milan?
No, it's not their best interest.
Whose best interest do agents think it's in?
It's in our best interest.
Because
Because it's a check.
I can get a paycheck. Exactly right. And we know, unfortunately, most agents think with their pocketbook. They really do. And that's where a lot of problems come into play. You've got to look at it, what's in the client's best interest. I talked about this before. Let's see if any of you guys remember anything I tell you. What's the highest dollar productive activity you can do?
Referral.
Oh, bingo, Bruce. Bingo Bruce, we'll call him. Do you understand what that means? If I can send a referral to anywhere in the country, and it takes me 10 minutes to send a phone call out to Enric out in California, and he sells them a $500,000 house, and I get my 25% referral check on, what's 500,000 times 3% is that 15 grand, right?
I'll take it.
25% of 15 grand would be what? Not quite $4,000, probably 37.50, give or take. For a 10-minute phone call?
That works.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Now, if you figured that out per hour, what would that actually be? How would you figure that out per hour? This is a math question.
Wow, it's like a.
You can just do whatever you make times 10.
I got two different answers there. How about if it took you 10 minutes, how would you do it? 0.6.
Uh,
6 groups of 10 in an hour, right? So 3,700 times 6 would be, that's too high for my brain, $20,000, give or take. Who'd like to make 20 grand an hour?
Me.
So would I. So you can see a dollar productive activity that is without a doubt the highest. Why do I bring that up? Because exactly this point. If you send a referral to somebody, is that as good? If you stop looking at little picture, or the little picture, and think about the big picture, you'll realize that sending a referral is certainly better than schlepping somebody all over to Milan, Michigan for a $100,000 or $200,000 house. It's going to cost you how much in gas, how much in your time, but yet you can get a smaller check, but a smaller check in less hours sometimes is good. Yes?
At what point do you say, because I'm a newer agent, like too far is too far to be driving? What's your limit?
I'm going to contradict myself here. No, I'll joke and say my limit's the state of Michigan, but it's really not. But you guys got to realize something. My clients, okay, very rarely do I get new clients. And the reason I bring that up is if I didn't know Stacy and Stacy called me and said I want to go home, show homes in Chelsea, I probably wouldn't do it. I'd probably refer it to an Ann Arbor agent. Now, if that was my niece, who I know lives in Ann Arbor, I would probably do it, okay? Over the years, I have gone from, you guys know where Marysville is?
Yep. Sounds more
Listed
pretty
it.
wrong one.
It listed a house up in Marysville. Saw it twice. The day I listed it, and the day we closed. And the day we closed, I actually drove by it. Didn't even stop in. Now, would I recommend you guys going to list a house in Marysville? No. It was a client of mine that I've done over 10 deals with the family. Okay? I personally think you guys should probably stay in it's not really the Tri-County area. I would do Oakland and Wayne for sure. I'd do part of Livingston. And I'd probably do part of Macomb. But I don't think I'd go a whole lot further than that. Unless you've lived in, a different part. If you've lived in Macomb, sure. I wouldn't even recommend you guys doing Ann Arbor. Because that's a different beast. They play by different rules out in Ann Arbor. They really do.
What about Belleville? Because I used to live in
Well,
Belleville.
Belleville's, it's funny, I used to think Belleville's that far, or is far. But honestly, if you drive down Haggerty, the other side of Canton, you're in Belleville.
Yeah, I lived there for
Yeah.
13 years.
I mean, if you feel comfortable with it, that's
So
fine. I mean, remember the whole idea is what's in your client's best interest. Are you a taxi cab driver or a professional? Too often, we don't think of ourselves, but what we are is a glorified taxi driver, and we're schlepping people all over. That is kind of the one thing that has changed. Who drives their clients around?
They do.
Huh?
They do.
You don't drive your clients around? Is my question.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that.
And that's probably one of the biggest things that's changed in the last 22 years. It used to be all that way. Now, there is a plus and a minus to doing that, very honestly, because while you're in the car with them, you can certainly have better dialogue, and you're controlling the situation better. Now, it can be painful if you're with somebody for a few hours, and it's like pulling teeth sometimes. But if you got the right client, I think there is times where you should do it. It gives you an opportunity to, to talk. But if you don't know an area and you're just taking them from house to house, what value are you really bringing to the transaction? That's why some people think that we're overpaid, because we don't bring value to the transaction. You guys need to bring value, and how you bring value is you become an expert in the area you work. Jim DeMora, very honestly, does not go outside of Novi and Northville.
No.
I mean, plain and simple, that is it. Mike Perna goes Southeast Michigan, okay? So it's all on how you want to do your business. I would say, if I were you guys, it's tough to turn down deals, but a lot of times if you're out in no man's land, you're chasing your tail. Be an expert in an area, and then if you choose to, grow the area slowly but surely. But my clients, like I say, it's very rare do I get new clients. Most of my clients are repeat and referral. And yes, I do get new clients, but they're referred, yes.
If you're working with a referral, I don't know if this is automatic to all agents, but how do you know you're actually going to get that 25% referral fee? I mean, do you have to
There's a
sign
referral
something?
fee. Yeah, there is a referral fee. If it's a Keller Williams, we have a in-house, referral fee form. And you can still, remember, if you send somebody a client, you can still kind of stay in touch with the client just to see how they're, doing. I'm kind of the opposite. If someone gives me a client, and I did this yesterday, I got a client that an agent from Royal Oak gave me, and I just called her yesterday and said, hey, just want to let you know, I ended up listing the property that that you sent me, and I just, I'll keep you informed. To me, that's good business, okay? Because the better you do with that, do you think there's a greater chance you might get more referrals from people? If you get a referral, take care of them like they're gold. You really need to. But yes, there is a form that we have, and it's supposed to be signed by both brokers. The outgoing and the receiving. So, okay?
Pete, I had a situation where a client, I was showing houses in Northville, Novi, we ended up going out to South Lyon, but and they knew another agent in Troy, and they wanted to do, have me be the agent here, but they were only going to buy one house though, and I wouldn't do it because that puts me in competition with the other agent.
But now that's what you have to look at. I mean, if you look at it and say it puts you in competition, you're right. But at the end of the day, what's in the client's best interest? I mean, unless you're truly well-versed in Troy, they probably are better off having an agent on that side of town. Now, and I've done this where I know agents on the other side of town, and we'll flat out say, you know what we'll do? We'll split the commission no matter what. But you got to have a good relationship with that agent. Okay, if you do that, that's okay too. But realize you may end up doing all the work and splitting your commission. But if you think it's worthwhile, always think of two things: the client's best interest and long term. And what do I mean by long term?
You're
Referrals.
establishing a relationship, it will come back.
Don't think of one deal. Where agents make mistakes in this business, and I hate to say it, I've been there. Okay, when I got into the business and for a long time, I didn't know where my next check was coming from, and I had no background. I mean, I was all into real estate, so if it didn't succeed, I was screwed, plain and simple. So I knew I needed to do this, and sometimes you act out of desperation. But if you really, and clients know that. I'm telling you guys that right now. Clients know when you're acting out of desperation. There is a feeling that's just a vibe that's coming off you. So if you look at this and say, long term, what's in my best interest as an agent? Don't worry about one deal. I always had the idea when I got into this business, if every year could be better than the previous year, I'd be happy. And it was. until I came to Keller Williams. And the reason I say that is, when I came to Keller Williams, remember, there was no Keller Williams in Michigan. There was Zippo. Jim DeMore's brother John put the first sign in Michigan. Okay, we opened Keller Williams in Northville, which was the first Keller Williams in Michigan. So did I know that I was going to take a step back? Absolutely. But did I also know that it was a risk worth taking? And that was a yes too. And by the next year, I had my best year in real estate. Okay, and since then, mine has gone kind of like this for a lot of different reasons. Mostly, I've held different positions, overseeing, opening offices, overseeing offices. I backed up my business, but if you keep your business, I want to improve every year. That's all you need to do. Don't get tied to one deal, because if you get tied to one deal, you lose sight of the big picture. So,
Well, I didn't think it was necessarily in the client's best interest to have two agents that were, especially if they're aggressive and they
well,
know
and
that
again,
so
Bruce, if you're looking at it's two clients, and I know where you're going. If it's two clients in Northville, you're right, because what's the old saying? If you got two agents working for you, neither one of them's going to work hard, potentially, because one of them's going to get screwed.
Well, on the other hand, they might really try to grab what they can be really aggressive, and they know that if they don't get the deal, there's something else.
Well, and that's
so-
exactly right. One of the agents is going to get screwed. But if it's a clear understanding, and that's why it's a fine line. If somebody says, I want to look in Farmington Hills and I want another agent in Northville, I'd probably walk away from that because it doesn't make sense. But if it's far enough apart, then it does make sense.
I didn't think that was that far apart. I've shown houses.
Well, and that's okay,
and
and you're right. If I wouldn't want that if it was Farmington Hills and Troy or Novi, because I know both those areas.
I explained that to him, and he ended up going with me instead of
That
the
was
other one.
good.
But I didn't feel comfortable with it. Didn't think it was going to.
Well, and I think in that situation, you're right. All right. Property, number 2, client desires purchase, lease, real property meeting the following criteria. That's where you're probably going to put a geographic area. Do you think most agents fill out number 2?
No, because they might change their mind.
They don't. And the reason being is, guess what they want to do? What were they thinking for? Themselves. So if they leave it blank, where are they showing them homes?
Anywhere in Michigan.
State of Michigan. So, if somebody comes to you and says, and this is where I asked you before, remember, on that one form, the agent or the agency disclosure, are you working with another agent? And they say yes. Are you represented as a buyer? And they say yes. You need to see their buyer's agency contract. This is what I'm talking about. And if number 2 is blank, you can't work with them. Plain and simple. Because they are under contract to work with somebody in the state of Michigan.
I put residential properties in there.
Anything, well, yeah, residential, yeah. That's kind of what we're talking about. So, you can't work with them. So what if you look at that and they say, well, I want to work with you. What do you tell them?
They have to dissolve the other relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Who can kill the relationship?
The agent.
The agent
Or the buyer.
The client? The client. I
Okay.
think it.
Mutual.
That's mutual.
That is, now, here's the difference. What's mutual mean?
You both agree?
They both-
Correct. Not agent can or client can. Okay? Agent and client. Or if you want to turn it around, you can say client and agent. But both have to sign off on it. We're going to talk about that in a second. Exclusive agent. Client agrees that during the term of this agreement, any and all inquirers and negotiating on behalf of client relating to the acquisition of any desired property shall be through the broker. What does that mean?
The client won't decide to go off on their own and actually purchase something, like if it's for sale by owner.
Or what? There's another one I want to throw out there. What's the other way agents get screwed?
Land contract?
Nope.
Tax sales?
Nope. You guys are thinking way too difficult here.
Relative?
Nope. There's either for sale by owners, stuff that's listed, or
Expired.
nope. How about new construction?
Oh.
And that's where agents will get screwed a lot. I gotta tell you something. Do business on the east side, new construction is a problem with builders. Those guys are slime over there. Not so much on this side of town. I heard you say that happened to you.
Yeah, it did.
Because agents, whose fault is that when that happens? It's the agents.
Because they didn't give them the buyers.
They didn't do things the way they're supposed to. When you're talking about this part, what are you supposed to say? If you see a property, whether it's listed, if it's for sale by owner, or it's new construction, please let me make the initial contact with them. Because if for sale by owner, if you make the initial contact, you got a pretty good chance of getting paid. If your client goes and sees the house and they fall in love with it, where's your value to that transaction?
There is no zero.
Exactly. Okay.
See, I felt bad when I was looking at new construction because we bought a house in Texas one time, and I was working with an agent, but I had no idea. He never ever, the 2 times we met, he never brought up the agency contract. So I just assumed when I went to the new construction that salesperson had an agent they worked with, and then he's calling me and saying, "Why did you go with him?" And I said, I had no idea what I was doing because it was the first time buying a house. So sometimes they just don't know.
Well, that's, knowledge is power, and you guys need to have the knowledge. Yes.
I'm not too informed about that situation, but with new construction, buyers agents don't receive commission on that? Is that how that works?
No, that's what I'm telling you. They will
Oh, they
if
will.
you take them in.
You have to initiate.
You have to go in and take the client in there and register them.
I see, okay.
Pulte is a lot easier than most.
And register yourself.
You know, you want to make sure that you're getting paid because
Yeah.
new construction, I can tell you there's probably not too many new constructions under 300 grand these days. So that's a $9,000 commission. Most builders, well, and here's what most people will say. Well, if I cut my agent out, I can go to the builder and get the price lower. And that's their logic. But builders will not do that, okay? Builders don't lower their price. Do you guys realize that?
Mm-hmm.
What will they do in most cases, though?
Give you more options.
They may give you options. Why do you think that is?
You don't want their,
They don't want their values to come down for the next client to say, they don't want Lon to come and tell his neighbor that I bought it for $270 when it's selling it for $300 because Lon's neighbor is now going to come in and ask for $270.
yeah.
So they won't usually lower their price. They have it built into their mind, into their prices, that X amount of deals are going to go through a realtor and X amount of people are coming in without a realtor. And it's all factored in. So they're not going to get this great deal based on, I don't have a realtor. So, all right. Terms cancellation. This agreement is entered into this blank day of blank in the year. This agreement shall expire on blank. This agreement may be canceled only by the mutual consent of the parties in writing. Again, parties means 2. Both people have to agree to it. Most buyer's agency contracts are listed like this. So if somebody says, well, I'm just going to tell my agent I want out of the contract, very honestly, that's not quite the way it's going to work. Both sides have to agree to it. Now, we talked a little bit about this too. Why do most people have a hard time signing this?
They're scared of the commitment.
Right, especially if they just met them the first time.
Yeah.
So this is where I was telling you guys, use it for a day, use it for a week, use it for whatever. And then once you have a relationship, extend it. If you told me the first time I said I wanted to go buy a house and I called up Stacy and said, can you go show me this house? And she goes, no, not until you sign a 6-month contract with me.
Well, I'm gonna go somewhere else.
I'd say pound sand. I'm not gonna do that. You know? What have you shown me so far? Have you earned my trust?
No.
But if you said, hey, I do need to have you under a buyer's agency contract, can we do it just for this house, just to see if we like working with each other? I'd say sure. What do you have to lose at that point?
Right.
Right, nothing.
Okay?
for that house, what would be the length of
A
the?
day, 2 days.
Okay,
Remember,
just
once,
go see.
once somebody gets under contract, and it's the same with the listing. If something goes pending, you don't have to extend your contract with the client because it's agreed upon that you now are in another contract, a
Oh.
purchase agreement or whatever. So I would do it, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever. This house only. However you want to do it. So, compensation of broker. This is, you guys, please listen to what I'm saying on this one. This is why people have a problem, potentially. Commission or a flat fee. That's what you're going to check in most cases, correct?
Yes.
In the event client contracts to purchase or lease the desired property, client will pay the broker commission equal to what? What goes in there?
3% or 1%.
3%. Just leave it at 3%. The purchase or client will pay a flat fee of blank, and we'll talk about a flat fee in a minute. The flat fee and the commission are due and payable upon closing. The commission shall apply to any purchase lease agreement executed during the term of this agreement or during any extension of the agreement. The commission will also apply to purchase agreements executed within blank months after the expiration or other termination of this agreement. What do we call it on the listing side?
Protection period?
The protection period. This is protecting you guys. Okay? And what do we put in there?
I put 4.
Hmm?
I personally put 4.
4 months? And again, it's one of these things I'm not going to say is right, wrong, or indifferent. But if I was the buyer on another, I don't know that I would go for that. If I was the buyer and you said I wanted a 4-month, protection period, I might say, sorry, that's not going to happen.
I haven't been putting anything for the protection period.
Well, you should. Well, if you don't, you should. I would say a month, 2 months is probably fine. Because bottom line is, if you showed somebody something and they were still messing around after your contract, expired, they should know in the first 30 days whether or not they're going to buy that house. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let's talk about.
Yeah, I got a question. On the first line, where it says the client will pay broker, the seller actually.
No,
comes
I
from
want you to
seller,
put
but
the
I-
client, this is why people get confused. Listen to what it says. The client in this case is paying 3%. Right? The way this is written. We all in agreement there?
Yes.
Bruce, hold on. If the property acquired was presented to the client through the services of the broker, that's going back to protection period. If the seller fails to close with no fault on the part of the client, then the commission shall be waived. In other words, if the seller doesn't close, I'm not going to charge Lon as my client that 3%. Because it wasn't Lon's fault.
Right.
Sure.
If the transaction does not close because of any fault on the part of the client, the commission shall not be waived and the commission shall be immediately due and payable. Does that make sense?
100%.
You screwed up, Lon. I did my work. You're paying me a commission. Now, are you going to stick that client with that?
Probably not.
You told me no.
It depends. If somebody has a death in the family
Well, of course.
and kills the deal, I'm probably not going to charge him. If somebody says, you know what, I don't want to buy this house because I find out that I don't like the racial mix of the neighborhood. May I stick him at that point? I might. Okay? Because you did everything you want, and this guy is just being an idiot. Yes.
In the situation, well, I came to a body where I had an accepted deal, and the girl just backed out because she says that it was a corner house, her father told her not to buy it, and I had asked her all of these questions in advance, and she told me just to let it go.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean,
And I've been working with her and showing her.
here's the thing. Do you think you're going to get more business from them?
No.
And maybe I wouldn't. If I think I might get business with them, I probably wouldn't. Okay, you just have to figure it out. But you gotta remember something. Even though this has been around for a long time, buyer's agency, I'm not sure there's been too many court cases on it, of getting somebody. So if somebody says, no, I'm not gonna pay you, I'm not sure how you hold a gun to somebody's head, because you don't have the money right now, right? So you gotta be careful on that. I'm a firm believer in, you know what, don't waste a lot of energy, go on to the next deal. Now, going to what Bruce was saying, client will receive a credit against any amount owed for any commission paid by broker, to broker by seller or cooperative broker. Does that make sense? So, in other words, and this is where I pull out the multi-list sheet, and I will show them, this is what I'm getting paid, 3%. So guess what? You're not paying me, Mr. or Mrs. Client. You don't have to pay me, the brokerage. But what it does do, it leaves it on the table if there's a for sale by owner, or, you know, they don't contact you in new construction. Now, what if you only get 2.5%? In theory, you can collect that extra 0.5% if you would like. Would I? Probably not. I probably never would.
Bless you.
I would probably just say, hey, listen, you know, I just want to let you know that, do you remember when we talked about commission, you said you'd pay me 3%. I'm only getting 2.5%. But Tanya, that's okay. But I'm not going to have, charge that an extra 0.5%. Can you do me a favor though? Do you know anybody else out there that might be looking for a home? And if so, can you pass along my name and number?
Sure.
You look like the hero to them,
Right.
and guess what? They're probably going to pass along your name and number. But if somebody falls into the idiot category, then you theoretically can go after them. A retainer fee. Client will pay the broker a non-refundable retainer fee of blank, due and payable upon execution of the agreement. The retainer fee shall be applied against any commission paid to broker by a seller or cooperative broker. I do not want you guys using retainer fees. And the reason being is, what ends up happening, there's always a misunderstanding what that person was going to do. Bob could have every intention of doing things right. He's the agent. But Stacy doesn't think that Bob was doing what he was supposed to do. And I've already paid out, Stacy's already paid out $1,000 or $2,000. So who do you think when she's unhappy with, she's calling? It's me. And it's a he said, she said situation.
Right.
It's just not a good situation to get into. But I do want to go back to flat fee. I jumped on that. And we talked about this in the past. The flat fee, I think, is good if you're dealing with low-end homes. If you're dealing with an investor, and these homes are a couple $1,000s in Detroit, and a couple $1,000s at 3%, you might make $60. I'm probably not going to do a 3% commission. Remember, investor is making money, or they wouldn't be investing. So there is nothing wrong with you making money. And you can tell them that I charge $1,000 minimum, or whatever. But make sure it's clearly written, so you don't get the shaft, the short end of the stick. Yes? You going to say something there? Compliance fee. Purchaser agrees to pay Keller Williams a $295 real estate compliance fee and a leaseor a $50 real estate compliance fee at closing for retaining all records pertaining to the sale, lease of the property for a period of 7 years as required by state law. Again, we've talked about things. It's all how you present it. If you stop in the middle of this and say, hey, you're paying us a $295 compliance fee,
Fire.
and I stop there, they're going to be, what do you mean? But if I say, hey, the only thing, Kendrick, you're going to pay us is a $295 compliance fee at closing. You okay with that? Sure. Move on.
Most people are fine with
Yeah,
that.
it's how it's presented. Everything in life is how it's presented. Disclosure of the broker's role. At the time of any initial contact, brokers shall inform all prospective sellers and their agents that the broker is acting on behalf of the client. In the event broker has previously worked with the seller of a particular piece of property as a sub-agent, Broker will preserve any confidential information obtained during that prior agency relationship. Client acknowledges and agrees that the preservation of this confidential information shall not constitute a breach of any fiduciary duty owed to broker or to client. What does that mean? Anyone want to sum that one up for me?
Any confidential information shared should remain,
Okay.
and not using it to.
You can't, if I get information, if I had a listing and I come across confidential information, Tanya was my seller at the point, and I know that Tanya's getting divorced or Tanya's got issues or whatever, and my listing expires, okay? And then I go and show the house to Stacy. I don't have an agency relationship with Tanya anymore, right? My listing expired. The information I got, I can't share that with Stacy because I got it during the time when I was listed with her. That's the first part of the statement. But back up a second here. As an agent, as a buyer's agent, I'm supposed to let you know anything and everything I know about the seller, right? But the second part says, I can't tell you that, and you're okay with that, Stacy, because I received that information when I had a listing. So you can't hold that against me if I don't tell you confidential information. Does that make sense? Conflict of interest, purchasers. Client acknowledges that broker may represent other clients desirous of purchasing, leasing property similar to the desired property. Client acknowledges and agrees that broker may show more than one client the same property and may prepare offers or lease agreements on the same property for more than one client. What would we call that? Or I kind of think of it this way anyways. What is that in another term? If I'm showing two people the same property, how do you have to act?
You have to act like a dual agent.
That is correct. You're acting as almost as a dual agent. I don't know why they don't call it dual agent, because you are in dual agency. Broker shall preserve any confidential information disclosed by any buyer client and shall not disclose the existence or the terms of any offer prepared on behalf of one client to another client. Isn't that dual agency? I mean, I don't know why they don't call it dual agency. In the event broker works for two competing buyer clients in connection with any specific property, broker will be working equally for both buyer clients without the full range of fiduciary duties owed by a buyer's agent to a buyer. Again, what does that sound like? Dual agency. In this situation, the competing buyer clients are giving up their right to undivided loyalty and will be owed only limited duties of disclosure, obedience, and confidentiality. So you're writing an offer on Maine, Bob, and Henrik is one of your clients, and Bruce is another one of your clients. And Bruce asks you, do you know if there are any other offers? What can you say?
There may or may not.
It's funny, in Con Ed they talked about that. That's why it's important that you say this to them. Right at the beginning, you need to tell them that, you know what, we may come into a situation that way. If you happen to let it slip that there's multiple offers out there, and if the agent calls you and says, hey, I've got another offer, I mean, your standard line, what do you think the next question a client's going to ask you? How much is it?
How much?
And the bottom line is, you can't tell them, obviously, and just say, hey, Bruce, I can't tell you that. Henrik, I can't tell you that. Put your best offer out there. Usually when you're writing multiple offers for multiple buyers, you got one other problem. It's usually your property, right?
Yes.
Because it's very rare that you're going to get multiple buyers on somebody else's property. Yes?
So if you're showing multiple clients the same home, the same home, you have to disclose to them that you're a dual agent, but you...
No, you know what? I never said it sounds. I said it sounds like dual agency. What you need to do is explain it at the very beginning, okay, that you're in a that it's possible that you could be in that situation. According to Con Ed, that was the one part I didn't necessarily agree with, I would let them know that you're dealing with multiple clients. They kind of made it sound, when I say they, Jack made it sound like you didn't need to, you just kind of refer back to number 8 here. But I did not mean to cut you off. You just have to tell the people there may be other offers. Put your best foot forward.
Okay, so just say, there may be other offers on the home, and just to make your best offer. Okay.
Yep.
Why is that given kind of a bad rap for if you're trying to be, you're working for the buyer and the seller, because that can happen?
Dual agency?
Yeah. I mean, like, you
Because
list the house.
agents don't understand dual agency. That's why I drill you guys about dual agency. And remember, I've told you guys repeatedly that clients don't cause problems. Agents cause problems. If you don't know how to explain it, what do you think you're doing to the clients? You're confusing them. You're just totally confusing them. If you flat out tell them, at the end of the day, if you're keeping their information confidential, it's not an issue.
Right.
But most people think that you're not going to keep their information confidential. Okay? And I mean, when you're talking about information, what is really the only thing that matters? If you're going,
The price of the house.
the price, the finance, right? I mean, everything else really doesn't matter. And what I tell people is, I'm not going to tell the other side what you're offering. Okay, and we talked about that. I mean, in a lot of ways, you're just from point A to point B, and point B to point A, right? This is what Enric offered Bruce. This is what Bruce's counter is. Okay? So, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And we talked about at the beginning of a transaction, if somebody says, what should I write the offer for? And you're in a dual agent situation, what's your answer? It's listed for 200, what's your answer?
What your best offer?
Nope.
Don't take asking.
They're asking for 200.
We know they'll take 200,
Right.
because that's what it's listed for. Right?
Yep.
I don't want to offer 200. That's okay. What do you want to offer? And I'll take it to the client. Don't tell me that, I'll offer 190, but I'm willing to go 195. Okay? But again, even if they do say that, can you go back to the client and say 195?
No.
No, you can't. So as long as you have that in your head, dual agency is pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's when people make it much more complex than it is, and they don't have a trust in you. And that's what I talked about. Dual agency needs to be brought up when you list the property or when you first talk to somebody as a buyer. If you lay your cards on the table when the time comes, it's not a big deal. I've never in 22 years had a problem with dual agency. Now the fact is, the first 7 years there was no dual agency. That's why I didn't have a problem. Now it's only 3 or 4 years. So, does that make sense? Okay. Conflict of interest sellers. In the event client elects to make a bona fide offer on a real property listed by a broker, broker shall act as a disclosed dual agent of both the client and the owner of real property listed by broker pursuant to a written agreement in the form attached hereto between the broker, the client, and the owner of the real property. In such event, broker shall be entitled to any fees owed by client pursuant to this agreement. Again, is 9 talking about you, or is 9 talking about me?
You?
It's only me. It's the broker, not the agent.
Same with 8?
What's that?
8 is more of.
No, because the 8 is you got both clients. 8's talking about you, 9's talking about me. Indemnification of broker. Client agrees to indemnify broker and hold broker harmless on any account of any and all costs or damages arising out of this agency contract, provided broker is not at fault, including but not limited to attorney's fees reasonably incurred by broker. That is kind of the protect yourself line, but realize something. Anybody, even if that's in there, anybody can sue anybody in our fine country. And it just becomes a headache. Now, does that help you? Possibly. You'd like to think, well, you can't do that. Very rarely do I see lawsuits where an agent isn't somewhat at fault. Okay? Accidentally or on purpose. Okay? And I'm pretty good at telling the difference between accidentally and on purpose. If somebody screws up and there's a mistake, we turn it into our E&O insurance and we help they handle the problem. If somebody does something wrong and against the law, what they get is me signing their pocket card and sending it back to the state. Plain and simple. Unfortunately, and I just did that to a couple people the last 6 months, that doesn't keep us out of lawsuits or with the state. It helps our cause when we have to defend ourselves that I took care of a problem like that. So you see why it's important and why I emphasize documents all the time to make sure that you guys understand it. You gotta realize something. Two things, actually. Your actions here impact everybody in this room and everybody in the office for two reasons. One, we're a profit sharing company, right? And everybody would like to get into profit share. The more money we spend on legal fees, guess what that eats into? That's less money in profitability. And even a bigger problem can be, if we got to a point where the state came in and drilled us, we could be closed down like that. And you guys would now be, I don't say unemployed, you'd be scrambling to keep your business going. It's my license on the line, okay? And I hate to say it, we're just not putting up with crap. And Wendy and I and Mike are all on the same page here that the standard's raising. I mean, things that we put up with in the past, not getting put up with anymore. So I'm not trying to scare you guys, but I just want to tell you that you can't.
What type of things in the past? Just out of curiosity.
Could be something as simple as an earnest money. It could be somebody forging signatures.
That's a big.
I found an agent that actually knew how to beat DocuSign and DotLoop and everything else. However, they weren't quite as smart as they thought they were.
So what are people doing with earnest monies? Are they stealing it?
No, they don't do them on time, let's say, or they, which is, that happens. I'm going to sit here and tell you I do it. I'm not the best, but I've gotten better.
If you have that situation, can you just like submit it, or should you be like?
You need to submit it with an explanation to Carolyn,
you need to draw
and you make it
attention
fine.
You want to draw attention to it.
You make it fine on it. What time is it? Do I have time for my great story? Let me finish and then we'll come back. We'll end with the story. Non-discrimination is agreed by broker and client parties to the agreement that are required by law. Discrimination because of religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, disability, familial status, marital status, height or weight by said parties in retrospect is prohibited. Very rarely do you get discrimination on the buy side. You get discriminated against potentially on the buy side. Very rarely is it the buyer discriminating against. Does that make sense? You may try to rent a place to somebody and the landlord may say no. Or you sell a place and the seller says, no, gotta watch out for my neighbors, can't let that move in here. Okay? So it's very rare on the buy side you get that, but it is out there. Condition of property. Client is not relying on broker to determine the suitability of any desired property for the client's purpose or regarding the environmental or other conditions of the desired property. If somebody says, I want to open a daycare, family daycare, you're not saying they can or they can't. You're selling them a house.
Right.
It's up to them to figure out what they can do or can't do. Entire agreement. This agreement constitutes the entire agreement between the parties, and any prior agreements, whether oral or written, would have been merged and integrated into this agreement. So remember, in real estate, it has to be in writing. So they say.
Pete?
Client has read this agreement, acknowledges receipt of completed copy of this agreement. Yes, who said something?
Me.
Yeah.
If an agent let someone believe that, well, or thought that a certain elementary school was to a house, and then it wasn't, would that ultimately be the buyer's fault for not like checking?
There's 4 potential problems there. Seller, seller's agent, buyer, buyer's agent. Who do you think is most responsible?
Buyer's agent?
Buyer's agent is. Because your fiduciary duty is to your client. Now, having said that, does the client have some responsibility? Yeah. There was a court case in Con Ed a few years ago where people got divorced. The divorce decree said that they had to keep the client or the kids in the same school district.
Right, that's.
I'm not sure which parent kept the house or whatever. Other parent goes and buys a house, agent takes them to the house. Oh yeah, it's in this school district.
Mm-hmm.
They closed, guess what? It wasn't. So, I can't remember how it ended, but I did believe the agent was at fault. So but it's the buyer's agent at that point.
To verify all the information.
Yeah. It's your responsibility.
You should have your client do it anyway.
And you're right, and a lot of
Yeah,
times you
I
can
do too.
say,
Yeah.
you know,
Just get lost.
please follow up with the school district, okay?
Because one of the things that I run into, it didn't happen to me necessarily, but when Oakland County was school of choice, and just meaning if you live in Oakland County, you can go anywhere you want. It was just your home school is where the bus would pick
Right.
you up. Well, now it's changed. If it's not K and 1, it's no longer school of choice. So knowing that from previous information, you say, oh yeah, Oakland County School of Choice, it can change. So it may have been true at a point, so I always say,
Right.
the listing says this,
You might
wanna
want to
check
double
with the
check it. If
municipality. You wanna build a
if
fence, check
schools
with-
are important, here's what you
I
say.
don't do it.
If schools are important to you,
Double check.
please follow up on it.
Yeah. I don't-
I do the same thing with them.
Somebody says they don't want to sign this. You gonna work with them?
No.
Nope. Sure. It's the right answer. Unfortunately, that's how most agents do. When do you think most agents get this signed?
First offer?
Either it's first offer, closing, yeah. When they turn the loop and it's not in, and Carolyn says, "Where's your agent contract?" Do you understand if you do it at the beginning, you're going to save yourself a lot of grief, and they're going to understand how the transaction flows.